Get me straight.
On today's episode of Keys to the Kingdom, we'll be taking a look at the Jungle King, the first alternate Keyblade that you can unlock in the game. In terms of appeal, well, it's a stick alright. I do appreciate how it has a completely different texture than most of the other Keyblades, but there's really not a lot here to work with. The color scheme's not doing a whole lot, it's pretty bland. I do like the more orange-brown of the handle, but then the purple around the guard is just kind of off-putting to me. And then you see it continue around the teeth, and it's really haphazard and random looking in my opinion. I also don't like how the guard is so circular. That's kind of a weird shape. It's a little too perfect. It doesn't really fit with this design of the primal Keyblade. I think the teeth is really where my main problem lies with this Keyblade. It kind of looks like a spine, like bones, which I guess to some people is cool, but to me it just kind of feels like you're mixing the theme up a little. The teeth look a little too jagged and misplaced to me. Like maybe it would have looked better if there were just 2 or 3 teeth, but right now it looks very much slapped together. I do appreciate this overall aesthetic of handmade. You can definitely imagine this as some sort of weapon that Tarzan would kind of whittle together, but I feel like it doesn't go far enough in that direction. So the final result is pretty underwhelming. I don't think many people would say that this is their favorite Keyblade. I think I'm gonna have to give this one 2 out of 5 hearts for appeal. Okay, so the Jungle King's a little underwhelming as a Keyblade as a whole, but does it succeed as a Tarzan Keyblade? And in that case, I still feel like it's pretty middle of the road. The way you can gauge theming for the Disney Keyblades is, without having to look at a list of all the worlds that are in the game, you should be able to point to that Keyblade and say, yes, that is a blank Keyblade. So in this case, if you had no idea that Tarzan was in Kingdom Hearts, you should be able to look at this Keyblade and say, this reminds me of Tarzan. And I really don't think this does. There's really no specific references except for the keychain, which is a butterfly, which is a very deep cut from the movie. Everything else is just a very generalized wooden Keyblade, really. The closest you get is the spikes on the guard, which kind of resemble a spear tip, but other than that, there's really not a lot of Tarzan here. It's a very basic design. I think I'm gonna have to go with 2 out of 5. Alright, utility is where this Keyblade might finally turn things around. Your strength goes up a whole 2 points from the Kingdom Keys 3, but where this Keyblade really shines is of course the reach. The next few bosses you're gonna fight are all either really big or spend a lot of time in the air, so having the extra reach comes in really handy. I'll always wait to fight Cerberus specifically after I get the Jungle King because their reach is so good in that fight. I'll give utility a 4 out of 5. The hit sounds really underwhelming to me. It basically sounds like you're hitting enemies with a squeaky toy. You're gonna be real sick of it by the time you get your next keychain, so no points here. The Jungle King leaves a green streak behind after you swing it. And when you land a hit, the particle effect is a green core with yellow stars and a bunch of petals. It kind of looks like a Paopu fruit actually, but it's a more direct nod to the animation of the basic cure spell. I actually really like this touch of tying the Keyblade to the magic that you acquire around the same time. It also fits the overall nature theme of Deep Jungle. I'll give a point here. The name itself is pretty bland, Jungle King. I guess Tarzan's technically the king of the jungle, but this would have been more fitting for a Lion King Keyblade. There's really not much to say about it. The keychain is easily the best part of this Keyblade. I love the touch of the string being a vine, and the keychain itself is a nice splash of color. I also think it's cool how it's a nod to the keyhole. Most of the keyholes don't really stand out visually, so it's nice that they kept the butterfly motif going. And finally, the X Factor. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this Keyblade does have the unique position of being the first unlockable Keyblade, so I feel like that's worth recognizing. It's just a shame that everything else is pretty underwhelming about it. Overall, the Jungle King is definitely a middle-of-the-road Keyblade. I think the biggest problem is that you're stuck with it for so long. So depending on whether you do Olympus Coliseum before or after Deep Jungle, you'll be using this Keyblade for 2 to 3 worlds. So by the time I get my next Keyblade, I'm definitely ready to switch this one out. It does have the novelty of being different than the Kingdom Key, which I also get pretty tired of by the time I get this Keyblade, but still, there's no real reason to come back to this one after you get about halfway through the game. Points for being one of the easier Keyblades to DIY at home though.